back in April of last year, I uploaded a video to YouTube on a particular Titanic tranner of Canada known as Jessica Yaniv. The video was a bit of an expose into someone who I saw as an emerging threat coming out of the trans community, someone weaponizing their own identity for personal gain. Now, in July of 2019, reporting restrictions on this figure were lifted, and as a result, many people on the internet came to discover the horror that is Jessica Yaniv, the sordid stories, the weird threats that have been put out there, and the silencing of multiple people who dared to speak out against them. In October, Yaniv lost the case that they became most famous for, which involved the waxing of the genitals. And at the time, I uploaded a video saying that I think that this is going to be the beginning of the end of Jessica Yaniv. Since then, Yaniv has tried to do quite a lot to stay in the public spotlight, has issued more and more deranged legal proceedings against various people and groups, has even assaulted someone. Now, in the last couple of weeks, whilst we've been dealing a lot with the coronavirus pandemic, a few interesting stories from Yaniv have actually come out, one of which being that Yaniv actually pled guilty to possession of an illegal weapon. That, of course, is the taser that they decided to whip out on a stream with Blair White back in August. And that could potentially end up with Yaniv being sent to jail. The actual sentencing is not due to be done until June of 2020, provided that there aren't any further delays in the legal system due to COVID-19. Now, that in itself is quite a big story. This is Yaniv potentially facing some jail time there, and that doesn't even take into account the other things that Yaniv has been doing that really should get this monster locked up. But the thing that I'm going to really be talking about today is something that at first sounds a little bit of a non-story, but stick with me. See, yesterday something happened which a lot of us thought would never actually take place. Yaniv has been very prominent over the last year and a half for their social media, I wouldn't say prowess, but certainly someone who uses it to their own gain, having purchased a lot of followers to bulk out their own presence, really, but more importantly, being able to use it to silence various critics to an almost terrifying degree. But yesterday, the impossible finally happened, and Yaniv has been yeeted from Twitter. That's right. You will not see them on Twitter again, at least under the Trusted Nerd label. Now, maybe Yaniv might come back from some sort of ban, but considering their actions on Twitter over the last year and a half, it would be quite strange if they didn't, especially considering some of the people that Yaniv got banned and are still not allowed on there. So why is this a story? Why is this something that we should really be talking about? Well, I want to first of all bring up a couple of people that Yaniv had quite prominent arguments with, to the point where some of them actually made the news. The first one being Megan Murphy, a radical feminist blogger who is still banned from Twitter to this day, and she was banned just for the crime of misgendering this. And the other person is Lindsay Shepherd, who was also banned for having an argument with Yaniv, where Yaniv was arguably the one who was more in the wrong here, using personal information about Shepherd as a way of point scoring, but Twitter saw it fit that Yaniv had done absolutely nothing wrong. Whilst Shepherd was brought back, Megan still is off Twitter, and it's unlikely that she will even return at this point. Yaniv has been able to weaponize social media for so long as a way of staying relevant, to be able to get their name out there. In the last couple of months, Yaniv's desire to remain relevant has seen a lot of fairly frivolous lawsuits being brought into play. These include ones against the post-millennial, but also against a disabled citizen journalist, which seems utterly deranged. But it was still through Twitter that a lot of people could kind of keep up to date with what Yaniv's activity was. I mean, the last couple of things that we actually learned from Yaniv whilst they were still on Twitter was that the $6,000 fine, so to speak, from the failed court case back in October has apparently been paid, with Yaniv then asking for people to leave them alone. However, the last tweet Yaniv seemed to have sent involved, criticism of the dreaded TERFs, with Yaniv saying, wash your hands if you've been near a TERF. The irony being that this kind of tweet came from someone who you can smell just by looking at a picture of them. Now, I apologise for continuously using that particular picture, so as a way of apology, please accept this short video on seals. But with all of this being said, I think it's important to understand just why Yaniv had been such a big impact in a real negative way on the world of trans rights and trans activism. Yaniv was someone that a lot of prominent activists like to pretend didn't exist, someone who was almost put out there as some sort of like alt-right troll, showing the very worst of the trans community out there. But a lot of publications, including the likes of Pink News, still treated Yaniv as a fairly respectable person and was quite sympathetic in their reporting on Yaniv. Now, what's really significant about all of this, though, is that we could potentially not hear from Yaniv again. This was the main way Yaniv was able to flex their power in the first instance, and a lot of this was kind of brought into question because people thought Yaniv had some high-up friends in Twitter. There was a particular photo of Yaniv with some quite high-up Twitter individuals from a few years ago, which seems to suggest that Yaniv has friends in high places. That would certainly explain why Yaniv had very favourable treatment over the last couple of years. He was someone who seemed to be able to do no wrong, and regardless of how creepy their behaviour was, it was always the people who called Yaniv out that were the ones who faced having their tweets deleted or even being banned. This goes beyond like Lindsay Shepherd and Meghan Murphy. Even people like myself had tweets deleted because they dare defend this, and that always felt a little bit wrong because it was very much one-sided. But that seems to have finally come to an end. Yaniv seems to have lost what little friends that they really had, and their kind of influence is waning. But where does Yaniv really go from here? I mean, obviously that's just Twitter, but as I said, the kinds of cases that Yaniv is filing against people, some with deranged accusations of sexual assault in some instances, and then you also have the quite well-known assault against a journalist a few months ago.
Yaniv, will you be pleading guilty? What?
Go.
No,
Go.
don't touch me. Don't touch me.
Hey! Stop! Go away from me!
Yaniv is fading into obscurity in almost like a battle situation, trying to throw whatever they can to see if anything sticks. And I think the only thing that will really stick at this point is the sentencing that could come in June. Or even more so, what the fallout could be from the assault charges. We could actually be looking into a situation where Yaniv goes to jail. And strangely for Yaniv, if they want to keep their profile up, that's the best case scenario, because that will put Yaniv back in the news, but it will just be a case of, what jail do you send this to? Like, because the current year, Yaniv certainly hasn't done anything important to push the rights of trans people. Yaniv has always been a fairly big cancer on the actual movement itself. That could be one of the reasons why a lot of activists choose to ignore them. But I think that with the saga, kind of everything crumbling in front of Yaniv's eyes, one other thing I have been thinking about could potentially happen. And part of me does think that maybe Yaniv might actually detransition. I mean, Yaniv has always looked for attention, for like to try and become famous by any means necessary. Certainly the trans angle helped, but when all this kind of falls apart, as it has been, like, you can't really push the trans angle much more than Yaniv really has. So maybe it's time for the Titanic Tranner of Canada to go back to the drawing board and cook up a whole new harebrained scheme to become worldwide famous. I mean, Trusted Nerd didn't work, the ball waxing case didn't work, Twitter hasn't worked. What else is there? I wanted to do this video mainly because at this current time with the pandemic going on, with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of negative news out there, I thought it might be good to highlight some good news. And when it comes to Yaniv losing any kind of reach is always going to be something positive. We are witnessing the end of Yaniv, and by June, Yaniv could just be another footnote in the weird world of trans rights. And I probably would have a little bit more to say on that in the coming months, as I do think that the worldwide political situation is going to be changing as a result of the pandemic, and it would leave cases like Yaniv as to whether they could even turn up again, because people's focuses are going to be elsewhere. But what do you think of this story? Is there anything that I haven't considered? Please let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. I want to give a special thank out once again to the people who donated to my live stream last week, where we raised £54. I just want to clarify, it was £54, not nearly 4,000. I do think that the screenshots that I shared might have been a little bit misleading to some people. I certainly didn't mean that to be the case, but I wanted to clarify. It probably wasn't as much as you were thinking, but I still really appreciate everyone who helped out. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. You can also support me on Patreon and Subscribestar. It would really help at this time. Thanks once again, and I'll see you all next time. And a special thanks to Alex Meadows, Alyssa Morris, Casey Adolphson, Dan Norman, Fenella Cooney, Glesley Lever, Holly Mahone, James C. George, Janine Karen, Jess, Joe, Kim Vandry, Latin Creature, Laura Manleaf, Moy Felicita, Ricardo Jose, Steve Hendricks, Tennessee Barfly, The Poor of Rizzo, Traname Girl, Zoe, Illiterati, Stephen Hansen, Laisha, James UK, and the rest of my supporters on Patreon and Subscribestar.